Hi to everybody. My name is Eleonora Papaleondioluca, and with my colleague Dr. Nikki Thoma, we had conducted a research on young children's self-regulation, which I'm going to present you now. The participants in this study were four countries, that is United Kingdom, Germany, Israel, and Cyprus. And we had the involvement of 10 preschool teachers from each country. So from Cyprus, we had the teachers you can see here in the slide. And before describing the specific project, I would like to give first some definitions, starting from the concept of self-regulation, which is the ability of the individual to manage his or her own emotions, desires, impulses, thoughts, and behavior. It is also the ability to direct himself or herself, to have personal motivation, and be independent in his or her own learning. If children are to be lifelong learners, they need to learn to become self-motivated learners, to develop positive attitudes to learning, and to develop positive attitudes to themselves as learners. As considerable body of research evidence has established, the extent to which a child becomes an independent or self-regulating learner with these attributes is a key element that largely determines how successful that child will be as a learner. Martha Bronson gave us a model of self-regulation, including four different types of self-regulation. That is the cognitive, which has to do with metacognition, the emotional, which is part of emotional intelligence, the social, which has to do with theory of mind, and the motivational, which is related to mastery orientation. I will explain each one of these in more details, but I would just want first to say that these four different types are not distinct and separate in everyday life. We just make this distinction for research purposes and to understand these types better. So first, the cognitive self-regulation includes abilities of thinking about own thoughts, have motivation in own learning, know own abilities and weaknesses, ability to design, program, control, and evaluate one's own progress, using a number of strategies from which to choose according to the task, believing that the success or failure in learning depends on ourselves, for example, on the effort we put, of the correct choice of strategy, etc. That is the internal locus of control. Investigators connect metacognitive ability with success in school as well as outside of it. As far as the emotional self-regulation is concerned, uh, this ability has to do with the child being able to express and control emotions, endure disappointments, control impulses and postpone satisfaction, control impatience, regulate one's own mood, prevent disappointment from drowning the ability to think, persist in adversity, and have hope. The social self-regulation is the ability of the child to develop social skills, be able to share and have cooperative skills, be able to solve conflicts peacefully, negotiate effectively, show empathy, and have the ability to persuade and develop leading skills. It also has to do with the development of theory of mind, that is, the understanding of what other people are thinking, feeling, and doing, in order to understand and predict behaviors and be effective in the social environment. And finally, the motivational self-regulation is the ability to set aims for oneself and struggle to achieve them, have internal motivation which will help achieve one's own aims, and take initiatives. And as Vygotsky told us, the process of internalization starts from other regulation and leads to self-regulation. So initially, the learning is modeled and articulated by an adult or a more expert child, perhaps, and then the child gradually becomes able to talk to himself or herself through the task with self-commentary, probably. And finally, the child can fully self-regulate using internal speech or abstract thought. What the literature says about it. Within cognitive developmental psychology over the last 40 years or so, there has been a very considerable body of research evidence related to the development of children as independent learners. Within the psychological literature, this has been various characterized as the ability to learn how to learn, self-regulation, metacognition, children's ability to develop self-awareness and control their own mental process. I'm going to skip some of these. Besides, there is evidence that teachers can be very effective in helping children develop metacognitive abilities and self-regulation, as a study by Handy and Whitebread showed with 3 to 7 year olds, which had clearly the ability to self-regulate themselves, and as a study by Perels et al. Showed that training of pre-primary school teachers on self-regulation has the most significant influence on the self-regulation skills of children. So it is really worth having teachers train on these abilities and skills. So coming to our own project, the general aim was to investigate young children's development of independent learning, including metacognitive and self-regulatory skills and self-reliant ways of dealing with problems and difficulties. The specific aims is to explore the relationship between self-regulation as measured by a questionnaire I will show you in a while, the child 3 to 5, with first solving problem abilities, second metacognitive skills, and third non-verbal intelligence. The hypothesis of our study was that this research project will enable preschool teachers to understand young children's metacognitive and self-regulatory skills. And more specifically, we expected there would be a positive correlation between young children's self-regulation and first, problem-solving abilities, second, metacognitive skills, and third, non-verbal intelligence. The tools we used for measuring the self-regulation ability of children was the Child 3 to 5 checklist developed in Cambridge by Whitebread and his colleagues, which measures the 4 types of self-regulation: emotional, cognitive, prosocial, and motivational. I will show you the checklist with the 4 different types, including emotional regulations questions, prosocial self-regulatory questions, cognitive self-regulation questions, and finally, motivational self-regulation questions. This study, as we said at the beginning, involved 4 countries, and the duration of it was 2 academic years. 10 teachers were recruited from each country and 60 children. There was an initial training of the teachers, so we had several meetings with them, and we watched the same video clip and tried to identify behaviors of independent learning and agreed on the categorization into the 4 different types of self-regulation. This experience was evaluated very positively by the teachers who learned to identify these behaviors. So we had each teacher choosing 6 children from her class. 2 of them measured as high in their ability to self-regulate according to the checklist, 2 with intermediate skills, and 2 with low skills in self-regulation. So total 60 children per country. The children were tested at 2 times points in autumn and in spring. The researchers visited the schools and carried out 2 problem-solving tasks, which I will show you in a while. And the children were videotaped and carrying out this task, and their behavior were then analyzed. The test used was first the child checklist, which I mentioned before, which measures the self-regulation ability of the children. The train track task, I will show you this in a while, which is a problem-solving task. The Ravens task and the seriation task. So the train track task is a toy developed by UNESCO. It has train track rails, and the children were asked to form 2 geometrical shapes, 1 circle and 1 tree. And based on the ability to solve this problem, they were given some points. The maximum point for the circle was 6, and the maximum point for the tree was 8. The iterator reliability was 0.96. This is the 2 shapes the children were asked to do, the circle and the tree, and the criteria which we used to evaluate their ability. These are some of the pictures where the children, you form the circle, and here the children forming the tree. The results of this study: in general, the project gave evidence that even preschool children do have the ability of self-regulation, as in cases when they produced ideas, solved problems and conflicts, made thoughtful decisions, became decision makers, planned, initiated, and reflected on work chosen by themselves. And there are also cases of self-regulation and independence in children's behavior in all 4 different areas: cognitive, social, emotional, and motivational. There are cases and strategies used by the children for dealing with problems and difficulties, such as self-help, peer seeking, and adult help seeking. And besides, this work has demonstrated the enthusiasm of early years teachers to develop their understanding of young children's self-regulating learning. More specifically, we had three findings. The first finding was that there was a statistically significant improvement of children from autumn to spring. And this finding seems to suggest that this checklist is a valid instrument which can measure this progress in children of this age. The second finding was that there was a statistically significant correlation between self-regulation as measured with the questionnaire and solving problem as measured by the trained task. This finding supports the hypothesis that there is a positive correlation between self-regulation and problem-solving abilities. The next finding there was that there is again a statistically significant correlation between the self-regulation ability and children's intelligence as measured with the Ravens test. So, concluding, the present study supports the idea that self-regulation in preschool children consists an essential component of learning related to intelligence, problem solving, and metacognitive skills, and a necessary requirement for the development of students who are autonomous in their learning and who will learn how to learn through life. This also suggests that intervention programs on young children's self-regulation are worth to be applied on a systematic basis in preschool education. Thank you very much for your attention.